There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from wanting too much for other people, wanting them to see what you see, feel what you feel, arrive where you've arrived, grow at the pace you're growing. You've been carrying this weight without naming it. The invisible labor of hoping, the quiet strain of waiting for someone to finally get it. The way you hold your breath in conversations, searching their eyes for evidence that this time something landed. It hasn't been working. You already know this. The people you love most are often the people you've been trying hardest to move. Not physically, emotionally, psychologically. You've been trying to pull them forward toward understanding, toward awareness, toward some version of themselves that would make the relationship easier to hold. But people don't move because you need them to. They move when they're ready. And readiness isn't something you can install in another person. No matter how clearly you explain, how patiently you wait, how many different ways you try to say the same thing. You've said it so many ways. You've been gentle. You've been direct. You've written the letter you never sent. You've had the conversation 17 times in your head and twice out loud. You've recommended the book, shared the podcast, forwarded the article. You've modeled the behavior you wished they'd notice. You've done everything except the one thing that might actually bring you peace. Letting go of the outcome. Not letting go of them. Not abandoning the relationship. Not hardening your heart or writing them off. Just releasing your grip on where you think they should be by now. Releasing the silent demand that they catch up, wake up, show up differently. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about recognizing that your standards are yours. Your timeline is yours. Your awakening happened on your schedule, not someone else's, and no one dragged you into it before you were ready. You found your way to awareness through your own suffering, your own searching, your own readiness that arrived exactly when it arrived. Why would it be different for them? The urge to change people usually wears a costume. It looks like love, feels like care, sounds like concern. But underneath, if you're honest, there's something else, a need for them to change so the relationship can feel different, so you can relax, so you can stop managing the gap between who they are and who you wish they were. That gap is exhausting to manage. You've been managing it for years with some people, decades maybe, holding the tension between loving them and being frustrated by them, between accepting them and quietly hoping they'll become someone easier to accept. The management takes a toll. It lives in your body as tension that never fully releases. As conversations you replay, looking for what you could have said differently. As the low-grade grief of wanting someone to meet you somewhere they've never been. You can feel it right now if you let yourself. The specific weight of a specific person you've been waiting on. The particular exhaustion of that particular hope. The way your nervous system tightens just thinking about the distance between who they are and who you keep wishing they would become. You've been working so hard at relationships that other people aren't working at. Not because they're bad people, because they're not where you are. They're not asking the questions you're asking. They're not uncomfortable with the things that make you uncomfortable. They're not evolving in the direction you're evolving. And you keep expecting the gap to close. Keep waiting for the moment when you'll finally be on the same page. Keep believing that if you just explain it right, demonstrate it clearly, love them hard enough, they'll arrive. But that arrival isn't something you can create for another person. It's not a destination you can carry them to. It's a door they have to walk through themselves in their own time, for their own reasons. Your reasons aren't transferable. Your awakening isn't contagious. Your growth doesn't automatically inspire growth in the people around you. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes your evolution becomes a mirror they'd rather not look into. Sometimes your change threatens the stability of a dynamic that worked fine when you were both asleep. This is the part no one talks about. Growth can be destabilizing to the people around you. Your expansion can feel like abandonment to someone who needed you to stay the same size. Your clarity can feel like judgment to someone still comfortable in confusion. Your boundaries can feel like rejection to someone who was used to your boundarylessness. You didn't do anything wrong by growing, but the growth has consequences. Relationships that depended on your smallness start to strain when you stop shrinking. People who loved the version of you that never asked for anything don't always know what to do with the version that has needs. Some will rise to meet you. Some will resent the invitation. And you can't know which is which until you stop shrinking and see what happens. There's a particular kind of loneliness in outgrowing a room you still have to sit in. Family dinners where you can predict every sentence before it's spoken. Friendships that run on nostalgia because the present has nothing new to offer. Partnerships where you've stopped sharing what you're actually thinking because the response is always the same. You haven't left these rooms. You're still showing up, still participating, still loving the people in them. But something has shifted, and the shift is yours, and the rooms feel different now. Smaller, maybe, or just less nourishing than they used to be. The conversations that used to satisfy you now leave you hungry. The connection that used to feel like enough now feels like a fraction of what's possible. Not because they've changed, because you have. And the you that you've become needs things the old dynamic can't provide. You used to think this was a problem to solve. If you could just find the right approach, the relationship would deepen. If you could just communicate better, they'd understand. If you could just be more patient, more compassionate, more clear, the gap would close. But some gaps don't close. Some gaps are just information. Information about where someone is, what they're available for, how much of yourself you can bring to the table before it becomes too much for the table to hold. That's not failure, that's reality. And reality is easier to navigate than fantasy. Easier than the story you've been telling yourself about what the relationship could be if they would just meet you halfway. Easier than the hope that's been keeping you in a state of perpetual almost satisfaction. The truth is simpler and harder. This is who they are right now. This is what they're capable of right now. This is the version of connection that's available right now. You can love that version or resist it, but you can't change it through wanting. Acceptance gets confused with tolerance. They're not the same. Tolerance is gritting your teeth through behavior that harms you, swallowing your needs to keep the peace, pretending something doesn't bother you when it does. Tolerance is a slow leak of selfhood, a gradual erosion of your own boundaries in service of someone else's comfort. Acceptance is different. Acceptance is seeing clearly. It's acknowledging what is without the desperate need for it to be otherwise. It's releasing the fantasy of who someone could be and meeting the reality of who they are. Acceptance doesn't mean you stay. doesn't mean you tolerate harm, doesn't mean you abandon your own needs to accommodate someone else's limitations. It means you stop arguing with reality. Stop spending your energy trying to make someone be different. Stop believing that your love, properly applied, can transform another person's consciousness. It can't. Love doesn't work that way. Love can hold space. Love can witness. Love can remain present through difficulty. But love cannot do someone else's inner work for them, cannot force readiness, cannot install awareness where awareness hasn't yet grown. You've tried. You've tried so hard to love people into becoming who you needed them to be. And the trying felt noble at the time, like dedication, like devotion, like the kind of love that doesn't give up. But there's a difference between not giving up on someone and not giving up your need for them to change. One is loyalty. The other is control wearing a costume. When you finally accept this, really accept it in your body, not just as a concept, something releases. Not relief exactly, something closer to exhale. The tension you've been carrying doesn't disappear. It just stops being yours to manage. The hope that was really pressure starts to dissolve. The effort that was masquerading as care reveals itself for what it was. A need for control dressed up in the language of love. You've been calling it love. The wanting them to change. The disappointment when they don't. The subtle campaigns to move them in the direction you think they should go. But love doesn't have an agenda. Love doesn't keep a ledger of how much someone should have grown by now. Love doesn't show up with a timeline and a checklist of required transformations. What you've been calling love might be something else. Need, maybe? Or fear? Or the exhausting belief that you're responsible for other people's evolution. You're not. You never were. You're responsible for your own evolution, for your own integrity, for showing up as the person you want to be, regardless of whether anyone else follows your example, for keeping your own side of the street clean without expecting it to inspire a neighborhood renovation. This is harder than it sounds. Because when you love someone, you want things for them. You want their suffering to end. You want their patterns to break. You want them to have the breakthroughs you've had, feel the relief you've felt, find the peace you've found. But wanting something for someone isn't the same as having the power to give it to them. And confusing those two things is where the exhaustion comes from. Where the resentment builds, where the love starts to curdle into something that looks like love, but feels like labor. You know this feeling. The moment when care becomes obligation, when patience becomes endurance, when showing up becomes a performance, you're too tired to keep giving, but too guilty to stop. The love is still there, somewhere underneath. But it's buried under so much effort that you can barely feel it anymore. Some people will walk beside you, matching your pace, sharing your curiosity, growing in parallel even when you're growing in different directions. These relationships feel easy, not because there's no conflict, but because there's no drag. No one is pulling anyone forward. No one is being left behind. Some people will walk behind you, not because they're less evolved or less worthy, but because they're on a different timeline. They'll arrive at their own insights in their own time, if they arrive at all. Your job isn't to slow down for them or speed them up. Your job is to keep walking. Some people will only meet you at the surface, not because they don't care, but because the surface is where they live. They're not available for depth right now, maybe not ever. And you can love them at the surface without pretending it's more than it is. Without mourning every time you leave a conversation still hungry. Without taking their limitations as rejection of your need. The grief here is real. The wish that everyone you love could meet you in the depths. That's a real wish. The disappointment when they can't, that's real too. But grief metabolized is different from grief avoided. And the avoiding is what keeps you stuck in the cycle of hoping and pushing and waiting and hoping again. Let yourself grieve the connection you wanted, the understanding you wished was possible, the version of the relationship that exists only in your imagination. Let it be sad without letting the sadness become a reason to keep trying. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to stop. Then see what remains. See what's actually being offered, rather than what you wish was being offered. See the person in front of you, instead of the person you keep trying to summon. There's a particular relief that comes when you stop trying to manage connection, when you stop curating yourself for maximum impact. Stop choosing your words based on what might finally land. Stop monitoring their reactions for signs of progress. Stop treating every interaction as an opportunity for breakthrough. When you just let people be, let the conversation be what it is. Let the relationship exist at whatever depth it can actually sustain. Let go of the exhausting project of trying to make someone meet you somewhere they've never indicated they want to go. This isn't giving up, it's growing up. It's recognizing that your energy is finite, that your capacity for emotional labor has limits, that you cannot want something for someone harder than they want it for themselves and expect anything other than exhaustion. The math is simple. If you're doing more work on a relationship than the other person is, something is off. Not wrong with you, not wrong with them, just off. Imbalanced in a way that will eventually collapse. You can't carry both sides forever, and you shouldn't have to. Loving people where they are also means loving yourself where you are. Honoring your own limits, protecting your own peace, choosing relationships that nourish you rather than relationships that require constant tending with minimal return. That's not selfish. That's sustainable. Your body already knows this, even if your mind keeps arguing. Your body has been keeping score of every conversation where you overfunctioned, every relationship where you carried more than your share, every dynamic where you twisted yourself smaller to fit someone else's comfort zone. The fatigue you feel isn't character weakness, it's information. Your system telling you that something needs to change, not them. That was never in your control. But how much of yourself you spend trying to change them. The people who are ready to meet you will meet you. Without manipulation, without campaigns, without the careful application of transformative pressure. They'll show up because they're ready to show up. And the meeting will feel different, easier, less like work and more like recognition. The people who aren't ready won't be argued into readiness, won't be loved into readiness, won't be weighted into readiness. They'll find their own way in their own time, or they won't. And your peace can't depend on which way it goes. You've spent so much energy on the second group, so much hope, so much patience, so much carefully rationed disappointment. And the exhaustion you feel right now, in your body, in your relationships, in your capacity to keep showing up. That's the cost of trying to move people who weren't asking to be moved. You can love someone and stop trying to change them. Can care about someone and stop monitoring their growth. Can hold someone in your heart and release them from your expectations. This is what it looks like to love people where they are, not where you wish they were, not where you think they should be, not where they'd need to be for the relationship to finally feel like enough. Just here, just now, just as they are. The rest is theirs to figure out.